Hi everyone, welcome once again to the 24-bit podcast, and today we are back to do our monthly roundup, looking back at big stories, big happenings in tech that made the rounds in the month, and in this case the month of February. This follows our January roundup. So as usual, with me I have the usual suspects.
Dixon Antiano from techish.com.
And Nick Anali from Tech Trends.
And today we are honored to have a guest on the podcast. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Okal. I'm a Kenyan lawyer by training, but currently in the US. Very passionate about law and tech and the intersection of law, policy, and regulation.
Good. Thank you, June, for joining us. And I'll start right with you. Please share with us one of the biggest happenings in tech, plus your area of operation and all of those things that will be of interest to our audience, please.
Yeah, I think a big one, especially in the litigation space, has been around, there's a number of cases that have happened over the past month. I'll just start with the US American ones because big tech, as we know it, is American-centric. There are two cases that were had on the 21st and the 22nd of February at the US Supreme Court around platform liability. So this law is called Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, and it essentially provides for protection of tech companies and tech platforms from being sued for third-party content. So think about it as you post content on Facebook, the app, for example, that is problematic, is illegal. The law, at least in the US, provides and states that you cannot sue Facebook. You sue the person who posted the content, the third-party creator of that content. So the first case it's called Gonzalez versus Google, and it was around an anti-terrorism attack that happened in Paris where an American citizen was killed. ISIS took responsibility for that attack. This was several years ago, but the family of the deceased victim took Google to court. And the claim was around the product YouTube. So you know how on the YouTube app, when you log in, you get to see whatever videos you're watching, but then on the side, it recommends other videos that you can watch. And so what was actually before the courts was whether recommender algorithms make platforms or the software companies or the tech companies liable for that content. Typically under First Amendment law and freedom of speech law and freedom of expression law, the position is that if you create content as a speaker or a publisher, you're liable for it because you're considered an author of that content. But then if you just distribute it, then you're not, which is the same logic that was being used for these tech companies, saying that we just provide a platform. Whatever third-party content creator puts, that's up to them. It's not us. So this issue, or at least the confusion around the specific law, has been going on for a while, and it's been a huge debate. The Supreme Court finally decided to take this case, and so it was very interesting to listen to the proceedings of the case. These are just oral arguments, so we won't have a decision until at least April, May, so a number of months out. But at least from the hearings or the oral arguments, it was interesting to note a number of things. Number one, the disconnect between just any judicial bench and understanding or appreciating how tech works and the legalities around it. They used very, very many analogies, which just confused all of us. And even the judges literally said a number of times, like, I'm so confused, I'm so confused, because the lawyers that they had either were not able to articulate what the issues and where the intersection of the law versus what their claims were. So that was interesting to see. I think the other thing that came up as well was the judges just literally saying, we're not the greatest, you don't have the experts, the internet experts in this bench, right? They just said we're not the experts when it comes to technical and technology things. So that was interesting to note as well. The same thing happened the following day. There was a case against Twitter. It's called Tamna versus Twitter, which was around platforms being used to aid and abet, in quotes, crime or problematic content. This specific one was really focused on the crux of aiding and abetting, which is around like criminal law. So think of if someone is going to rob a place, let's say like Chenze wants to rob the bank, Loop, or if Dixon is mad at Loop and wants to attack people.
I actually could use the money. I'll do that.
Yeah. and you give him your car, right? You help him get access. Or for example, if you work at Loop and you help someone get access, that would typically be considered aiding and abetting. But in tech and on platforms, the question is, are these platforms acting as facilitators or enablers based on the content that they put out and the algorithms that they have? So it's an interesting case, both interesting cases. We wait and see how they play out. My sense and my gut feeling is that they'll probably send it back to Congress, which is the parliament, to just re-legislate that law. And like what would typically happen in Kenya, where you might have a judge making a call on it. The US is very clear on separation of powers.
Good, thank you, June. Now, while we are staying with the creators thing and still in the US, we had some interesting news at the start of the month. Elon Musk has many of his faults and he runs Twitter like we run our Twitter feeds. Anyway, but he came and said something that is of interest to us because we do create content and we do put online. And as you know, we really love our Twitter. He said Twitter is not going to start a revenue share
Oh yeah.
creators. So how does, to ask you a question, how does that look like? Because he hasn't shared details about how they're going to implement all of that. So from a legal standpoint and an operational standpoint, like what should somebody like me who just is constantly engaging on Twitter, what should I look forward to? Should I be excited, or is this something only US people should be excited about? Yeah, if you've had the news.
Yeah, let's start with a disclaimer. This is not legal advice.
Wakili, a quick one.
No, we don't do that here. But I mean, there's a lot of conversations happening around Twitter and how it's being run, right? From a governance issue, like how can one person wake up and decide what happens on the platform? And there's a lot of academic conversations happening around that, even with governance officials. Elon is unique and is peculiar. I do appreciate, and we're all aware of the realities, which are whatever decisions are made, especially for American tech companies based and headquartered in the US, will probably and likely start being implemented in the US. I'm yet to see or to figure out how that will work on the continent and what that looks like, even in terms of rev share. So I guess for me, it's a wait and see. I don't have any. Sina maoni. I don't have any official opinion. For me, it's a wait and see at this point. Because even implementing it, right, there's so many things that he has to go around to figure out. I mean, I think Twitter has bigger problems.
What I think is quite interesting, and I am writing something on the same, is how Elon's ideas look crazy wakati anazisema, and then 1 month down the line every other social media platform is copying it.
Good.
When they introduced verification, everyone was like blah 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 verification, why would I pay $8 blah blah. Now Meta introduced verification for Instagram and Facebook. Tumblr is doing something comical with the same, where you can even buy verification for another account and all that. So in less than a month, it's now normal to pay for verification. When just a few weeks ago, it looked like something absurd. So hata wakati anasema, you'll be paid for your tweets if ads appear below the tweets and all that, it may look like something crazy right now. But this is a conversation that has gone on for a while. Everyone has been saying YouTube pays you to create content. When you put content there, you get adverts and you can get a commission based on how many adverts are viewed and all that. Facebook collects your data. Everyone has argued that. Twitter collects some. Yes. Everyone has argued and alleged. So if you can be paid to put content on a website, it seems absurd that adverts under your tweets, once you pay for verification and all that, is when you'll be paid. But over time, the conversation, I think, will change, and we will see it form or morph into something that's workable and something that people will be looking forward to. Yeah.
But remember, he said, should he implement this only apply to people who, Twitter Blue subscribers? That's what he said.
That's why I'm saying it looks absurd right now that you have to pay for verification, pay him a monthly charge, and then get paid to tweet. But over time, as you can see, Twitter has really changed in the past few months since his takeover. It looked negative, but then there's some positive aspect towards it and all that. So let's see how it moves, because I think it's being run like a startup. I have an idea. Imekata toa hivyo.
Yeah. I remember in November doing a story, where he was also quoted saying, that YouTube, will pay creators more than what, a higher proportion than what YouTube is doing. So I'm really looking forward to see how he's going to implement that.
I've just literally read an article about the great breakup.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So the great
Who and who broke up?
Sorry to divert the conversation, but the great breakup is like strong female leaders leaving the workplace, and the analogy or the example they're using is the Australian, is it Prime Minister or President who quit? So they're saying that people are
and it also happened this month. The YouTube head stepped away
after how many years?
I was interested to see whether if it had anything to do with the Supreme Court case, because YouTube was literally on the chopping board before the Supreme Court this week, and it's the same week that Susan quit. Probably not interrelated, but yeah. But we are yet to figure out why she quit, right? She obviously said it was personal reasons and health and hobbies, which everyone in big tech says after reaching a certain level. And they hit a certain tax bracket and they're like, oh, I just want to live life. I want to work on personal projects.
But from the videos that we've seen, no, Sandberg is understandable. She's been there for like a while, but for everyone else, pinch of salt, because
Yeah.
So from the days of the garage Google to employee number 16. But for other than those two who are prominent leaders in tech, for everyone else really, because we get to see their day in the life videos, they practically leave their hobbies at work. So what do you leave work for? Anyway, now jokes aside, if we are to look at the happenings in February, which have a huge correlation with the happenings in January, there was a significant number of layoffs that continued in Feb. So we had GitHub let go of 10% of its staff, and GitHub has about 3,000 employees. So you know what 10% means. Yahoo, 20% of its staff, and that affected mostly 1,600 people in its ad tech side of the business. And we had Zoom letting go of 15% of its staff, around 1,300 people. And then Dell let go of 5% of its staff, that's 650 people. And then Pinterest let go of 150 people. And e-mobility startup Rivian let go of 6% of its workforce. But the point is the tech layoffs continue. And most recent story from last weekend, Chipper Cash conducted another round of layoffs, this time around affecting over 100 people. And they basically wiped off the entire crypto department, even though the company has found a letter refuted those revelations and said they're still keeping their crypto department. Crypto is critical to the operations and whatnot.
Something you don't like to hear.
And whatnot. But the news out there is over 100 people being let go. So at this point, it's looking like very grim. So my question is, beyond the observations I've made, is when does it all end?
Yep. Because even for the Chipper, they actually didn't, before they made the official announcement about actually the layoffs, someone actually just sent us a scoop about the layoffs, and we ran with the story. Because if you notice, actually, before everyone else picked the story, Nani wali tuma yunini exactly. So and it really, like for Chipper and basically all the other startups we've seen in Africa that are doing layoffs, so it's so hard to understand why this is happening, considering they've been raising so much funding, and
they just bought a startup in Zambia, right?
Yeah, they bought a startup
towards the end of the year. But of course, there's the small matter or big matter of their funder, one of their funders, FTX.
Yeah,
FTX had injected some cash into Chipper, and we all know what happened with FTX and some Bankman-Fried and that whole circus. That's 1 and 2, and then 3. There's this trend. All those other companies that have whose names I've read out for whatever happened in February. So it's a trend. Everyone is being very cautious. Like, the market has slowed down. It's not that these people are making losses. No, just that their future projections are such that they need to maintain their profitability. So how do they do that? By amping up the operations to maximize the money they're making, but also spending as little as they can. And usually when people are looking to do that, the easiest stone to pick is to just let go of people.
Because I think something else I noticed during the pandemic, I think most of these tech companies really did
it was a crazy hiring.
It was a crazy hiring spree actually from most of these tech companies, especially remote workers. And if you noticed, with this,
there was an increased demand for their services.
Yeah. And now they're letting off the same workers they hired during the pandemic.
A lot of them during the pandemic. Yeah.
What I don't get, and it's the same thing with banks in Kenya, is there's been profits. All these companies have been making good profits. Right now, they're still projected to be making profits. So capitalism imetufikisha place yenye if we don't make the same profit as last year or better, we fire you.
Yeah, because shareholders will be up in arms. Yeah.
I really feel bad for most of these employees who have been laid off. Because there was an article on Insider, I even shared on my Twitter feed, last week. They were talking about how most of these tech companies spoiled workers for decades, and now layoffs are bringing them down to earth. Those parks I saw you talking about. Yeah. People are used to being to, Umezwa, you've been there for all these years. You're used to all these trips, all these nice parks. Then boom, all of a sudden, it's all actually coming back from that and just getting back on your feet. And something else I noticed also, another article was highlighting about how most of this now, long employees who have been working on these companies are now coming out to build their own startups. So that's
that's the upside.
Yeah, the upside. Yeah. So I hope there'll be a surge on most of these tech startups from these people who have been laid off. So something to actually look forward to.
It'll be bittersweet when they go fundraise from the same people who laid them
exactly
off, and maybe even have their companies acquired. Now, Kenya Power held an e-mobility conference this month. Yeah. Does that mean anything for Nick? You are the one who wrote about them converting 2,000 of their vehicles to EVs, or something. What does that mean for the future of EVs in this country? Because if February has been nice for EVs, there's the news Nick wrote, and there's the e-mobility conference where Kenya Power brought about players in the industry and other people of interest to chat like away a future, blah blah. And Basigo has been all over the place. In January, we saw photos from the port of new electric buses coming. Then in February, we saw them delivering them to various partners, Super Metro and others. I was hearing about for the first time.
Some announcement this week. I have a story in my drafts from. Let me just check. You can go. Let me just check the other story.
Personally, Mimi, to be very honest, I believe in the idea of electric vehicles, but in the standpoint that they work best as public transport vehicles for urban areas, especially in Kenya right now. Take Super Metro, for example, with Basigo's electric bus. It makes sense because it can cover most of Nairobi, doesn't require charging throughout the day, isn't the congestion on the road because these buses are quite big, eases on fuel and all that. But take yourself, for example, Chenze, if you take an electric car, can it take you to home from here? Unaona?
Nope. Ni kuna vile nazaliwa na simba hapo katikati ya Savo.
Yes. So right now it makes sense for public transport in urban areas. It doesn't go, these are places you don't cover large distances to have electric buses or electric vehicles. Second of all, I don't think we can trust Kenya Power as much with electricity. One, ndiye ameshatuambia electricity can only get expensive.
or we don't get
it. So second of all, we have more electricity than we need as Kenya. We produce we are top in green energy, sindio. We use geothermal and hydroelectric, yes, and wind energy.
But we're still not getting cheap power.
But we are not getting cheap power because of one, taxes. When you look at the breakdown of taxes, for example, I paid 2,000 for the month of January, and 700 is what was units. Hizo zingine zote zilikuwa taxes. So we are paying more in taxes than for the power. So how will that be calculated, say, if I have an electric vehicle? If 70 units at 2,000 bob, 70 units, and the unit is how much? A unit, kilowatt hour is like, it's not even kilo. What's the, let me just look at my message. So imagine charging a vehicle from 0 to 100. How much will you be paying? So it still doesn't make sense in terms of cost in Kenya.
Maybe it's because maybe that's why we need Kenya Power in there, because if a third party is to implement a charging network, they'll pay Kenya Power.
Yes.
They'll have to do negotiations differently and all of those, and those can be difficult. When it's Kenya Power doing that, and there's government support, because for e-vehicles to take off in Kenya, the government will have to throw its weight behind them, offer some sort of subsidies. This is how it's worked. I know the last thing Kenyans will want to hear right now is subsidies, because it means the government spending more and the government doesn't have money, and lots of subsidies were already taken away from basic commodities and everything. But we're talking about the future here, so it could be next year, could be 2 years from now, 5 years. For EVs to take off, those will need to come in somewhere, and part of the subsidies will have to go through the cost of power, so that the per unit building makes sense. We've already complained of high petrol and diesel pricing, so having something that we can market for electric cars isn't going to stretch.
I don't think we really need Kenya Power. First of all, I think we need to break the idea that we have a monopoly for of power. So if we had very many suppliers of electricity, it will make sense to have them compete against each other for, say, electric charging facilities. Kenyan can move into electric. They already announced
they have their own plans. They're doing tests with their own cars. Some in Embu or something, and in Olkaria.
So if we can have an idea that we don't necessarily need a monopoly to supply power, I think all the issues with power can come to rest. Second of all, I think another way of making electric vehicles take off is just to have government policy that every government official who's licensed to have a car under the government should use an electric vehicle. So the president, the ministers, the MPs all drive electric. And then you will see electric chargers across most parts of Kenya. And you ban them from using flights if they are helicopters. So kama mtu anataka kwenda Mandera, a charge gari yake.
That will have worked a long time ago if we even force those people to use our roads. Our roads will be way better.
Kenya Power was saying they have installed a capacity of around 3,312 megawatts against a peak demand of 2,132 megawatts during off peak, which happens actually late at night. They are saying the demand dropped
300.
At
300.
Yes.
Not that 3,000.
300. So during off peak hours, the demand drops to about 1,100 megawatts. So I mean, they're thinking if people charge, if you go to actually handle, people actually charge their cars at night. They believe they're able to handle off peak without disruptions. And
bado sioni electric cars ikitake off Kenya. I've already touched
the rider should be in soon. But they will take off at some point. It's the future.
It's the future, but I still argue that hybrid vehicles are what we should be focusing on in Kenya. A car that either uses both fuel and electricity, or one that uses fuel and charges a battery, or one that Why? Because we've already covered distance and any electric vehicles cannot. Second of all, it's cost of acquisition. Electric cars are still very expensive to acquire. Compare the cost of, say, a new electric vehicle to what in Kenya we buy second-hand vehicles from Japan mostly. So if you're to acquire an electric vehicle from Japan, it will be second-hand one. That means it has been used for at least 7 years in Japan. I wrote something saying that Kenyans should have legislation on electric vehicles before the dumping starts. So one of my arguments in that article was that we should have a policy that states that if you're importing an electric car, the owner from Japan or wherever you're importing it from should have need the battery, exchange the battery for a new pack, so that you don't buy an electric vehicle when it was new, it could cover 500 kilometers, but now 7 years down the line, it can only cover 100 kilometers. That means you're paying for the car, then you'll be paying for the battery. Then these dead batteries will be dumped in Kenya in some way.
So the story I was looking for about Rome, so they announced a partnership. Is this Hitachi or Hitachi? How do you pronounce it?
Hitachi.
Yeah. So so the collaboration will focus on electrification in Kenya, and will be geared towards increasing the number of electric motorcycles and buses available, for public transport.
And that's why hapo ndio nasema electric vehicles should focus on public transport. There are so many motorcycles currently, if you've noticed, that are electric.
Yeah.
Many food delivery companies in Kenya, especially in Nairobi, are using electric cycle bikes.
Yes, e-bikes are a thing.
The e-bikes. Many of the, if you, especially around where I live, there are very many silent motorbikes, and they're all electric. So I on that note, I wanted to add that I think there should also be legislation on how motor vehicles that are electric should sound. Because mi karibu nigongwe na pikipiki na hukujua kuna pikipiki because it's electric, haina sound. You're walking na unasikia so sound on anyway, Rome.
Yeah, so basically that was the announcement they actually made today. Is it today or just this week, I think?
Good. Let's revisit something that we also talked about in January. It looks like our monthly recap is full of hangovers from the last one. The generative AI conversation, the era of large language models. When we talked last time, we were talking about ChatGPT and the disruption that it's brought and all of those things and the future that it's heralded. In February, we got to see those things move very fast. For instance, Google announced its own ChatGPT competitor. That was, what do you call this? Bad AI.
And it was bad.
Bad in the case of William Shakespeare was called the Bard of Avon. Of Avon. BARD, yeah. And it flopped at its demo, so story for another day.
It did not flop.
Yeah, but like it's Google, we associate Google with accuracy. We, as humanity, we went from always backing up online searches, because I was around at the time when Google search was coming, always backing up online searches with physical readings, books and everything, to trusting online searches, to we've also come of age where everyone knows Wikipedia is a user entry encyclopedia online, but where it's also still the first place that we go to look up just about everything.
A lot.
Yeah, which says a lot about how we are going to trust these generative AI tools, especially the conversational ones like ChatGPT. There is hullabaloo all over, because now we went from bad AI to an event the following day where Microsoft,
everyone wanted to be the first.
Yeah,
so Google announces,
where
announces something, it's not ready.
So we went to Microsoft event where they announced that they are launching a supercharged Bing with AI.
Bing with AI.
And the AI in this case being their long-term project called Sydney, which has been in the works for years, but which is now has gotten a boost by GPT. Some are saying maybe we are looking at GPT 4.0, because ChatGPT is powered by GPT 3.5. So GPT 4.0 is unreleased, and it could be what powers the Bing. But the reason I'm bringing up Bing right now is because everyone has gone hysterical with the responses they are getting from Bing, which has forced Microsoft to limit the number of time, all of those. But if you have to draw parallels between what we are getting from these chatbots, because that's what they are, and what we used to get from Google search and Wikipedia, will come a time where we'll just take everything they say, but it will be a while.
Time,
yeah.
I signed up for Bing, the new Bing, and got in on the wait list. Haraka sana. I was actually shocked. I thought it will take forever to get in.
You got in?
Yeah. So I've been using Bing with Bing AI. The first time I was actually really impressed. What I really like from Bing chat compared to the demo from Google Bard is that Bing annotates every answer. So if it's giving you an answer, and this was particularly a cause of concern for me, because imagine I write an article of, say, Tecno Phantom X2 Pro or the Reno 8T 5G, Sindio? And somebody goes to Bing AI and tells it, can you tell me everything Dixon said on the review in like 2 sentences? So the AI will go and say everything, and that person doesn't need to read my blog. So as a publisher, this is a huge cause of concern. We are big publishers in the tech space. But there are bigger publishers that rely on AdSense, they rely on adverts, they rely on that. So what happens to publishers? And how does that affect content creation going forward? Will publishers need to publish content because AIs and search engines needs to survive based on content that's created? If there's no content created, there will be nothing for the AI to answer. So where is the merging point where you create content and you get adverts, and Bing gets to scrap your content and give someone a one-line answer, and you still make money? So what I liked is that Bing annotates. So if it gives you an answer, you will find numbers to tell you where the content is from and which website, and it tells you to read more on the website. Google Bard, from the demo, we haven't all interacted with Bard because they haven't opened it up for testing, does not annotate. It just gives you an answer because it believes it knows if you watch the demo. And that's the wrong thing with Bard, because you noticed with the demo on Google launch day, there were answers that weren't correct. Yeah. So my interaction with Bing AI has been such that this is not really AI the way we would want to think. It does not think on its own. It's just a language model that can read words and give you a rephrasing of those words. So in terms of being able to answer, it can, but the information is not accurate. For example, ukiuliza specs za particular phone, you'll notice it doesn't get them correct. Also, it doesn't really understand context in terms of time na vitu zingine. So kuna sometimes it takes information from the past and believes it's information for that time, and there's no way to be sure unless you really know what it's telling you is correct. So at the back of your mind, while using these platforms, you should know that they don't know what they're talking about. They're just language models that can scrap the internet, get similar looking words, and give you information. Yeah,
that's why actually this week they released the preview releases for Android and iPhone. I think
they did, but I haven't accessed that. If I am accessing Bing, it's on Edge of the desktop.
Yeah, they've brought them to mobile. You know, the one thing that we forget about ChatGPT is the GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer, which is, for those who are not well versed with computing terms, it means this is if they were to be a person who's been fed lots of text, lots of information, and now they are able to gobble it out on the other end. It's the largest artificial neural network of our time. I think they were saying it's been fed over 175 billion parameters. Yeah. So it does all those combinations. That's why a lot of sometimes you will ask something and you just get a jumbled up text that doesn't make sense. Yeah.
And something I noticed because I've used ChatGPT and I've used Bing AI is Bing AI cannot do most of the things ChatGPT can. It has ChatGPT doesn't have current information. It will always give you information up to 2021. So Bing AI has information up to 1 hour ago because it can read the news. Bing has allowed it to be able to look at news. So the problem is certain features that you could do with ChatGPT you can't do with Bing AI, yet we are told it's powered by a new model of ChatGPT. For example, on ChatGPT, I can just scrap content and tell it to rewrite it. If you do that on Bing AI, it will tell you, copyright problems, you can't rewrite, until I think 3 days ago, you could chat with Bing AI. You could ask it personal questions, try to play with it to make it tell you, and people have done this. People have made it tell them secret information about how it has been programmed and all that. But until I think 3 days ago, now if you do that, it tells you this conversation is over. So every time you try and ask it something that it feels could violate its policies, this conversation is over. Yeah. I asked it, do you record every information we talk about? And it said, don't tell me your secrets. Because I will have to, if it violates laws, and all that. Yeah.
But apparently, MS, has been testing Sydney for years. Actually,
Yes.
It's just that they weren't going as fast as they would, and it will have taken them much longer. That's why they're investing. Word on the street is they gave OpenAI 10 billion USD.
Yeah, they've given them a lot of money. That's what we were saying, I think, in the last monthly review, that Microsoft spent so much money investing in OpenAI, which could have cost the layoffs because money to... what I think we should note is that the race to this AI language predictive models is not over, because Microsoft could appear to have won it, but sahi may limit so many of the functionalities. It's still in waitlist testing. Google hasn't yet launched, and we don't know how it shapes up in the future. What if Google's own software comes and works way better. Remember, we have Google Assistant and all that. So there's still a lot to come, and I think this is not the end. Like people who are saying Google is done. Yeah.
Good. I want to bring you back to the layoffs. I forgot to highlight, and this should affect all the nerds who are listening to this, because at one time or the other, we've gone to DigitalOcean to use their massive, nice tech tutorials. The entire technical writing team at DigitalOcean was fired as part of the tech layoffs, and it's one of the saddest things ever. Anyway, moving on. The entire team. Moving on swiftly, we talked about Twitter, Elon Musk, craziness, all of those things, and some of these features coming elsewhere, like Facebook is doing with their verification. One of the things that when was it? Was it last month or December when they brought this whole new colored verification badges, where we have grayed out gold for government officials, gold for businesses or pretty much everyone, and then the rest who are playing for Twitter Blue get the blue, and those who had been verified pre-Musk get to stay with the blue check marks, and they have a description that they're legacy accounts. They may or may not be notable. Now, that gold check might have been given to a business, but Musk wants, apparently in leaked conversations, Musk wants businesses to pay for them. And how much did it cost again?
$1,000 a month.
So Dixon, if you had a bunch of staffers working for you at Techish and they all got blue check marks courtesy of the company, and Techish has, of course, the gold check mark, will you pay $1,000 to sustain that operation?
No, of course no. But like I said at the beginning of this podcast, some of Musk's ideas appear crazy when they are mentioned, but then give it a few weeks and a few months, every other company will be doing it. So maybe not $1,000 for Kenyan companies, maybe say 50, 100, but over time it will be that way. If it takes off, Facebook will do it. Because if it takes off, WhatsApp, remember WhatsApp business.
Because it's an easy way of making money.
Yes.
$1,000 per user.
WhatsApp business, WhatsApp hasn't been monetized properly. It's the biggest messaging platform. So what if Meta just decides, you're a business, you want to be verified on WhatsApp business, pay us $10,000 per month. We will do this to make you notable. Unaona? It appears crazy, but it will.
Nikiongea kwa WhatsApp group, my messages are more prominent.
But the interesting
thing, mute,
the interesting thing is actually people actually signing up for Twitter. People are signing up.
Yes, people are.
Like we tried with the Tech Trends page, and we got the verification. Like, okay, I was just trying to see what features actually come in, and I mean, it was verified.
You can now tweet characters
and edit my tweets, post longer videos and all that. I remember the article I was doing around it. They were saying around 300,000 people already signed up. And that's a big number actually for.
And that's big numbers for a company that since its inception hasn't found a good way of making money. Twitter makes the news for the world. Unaona a trending topic on Twitter, then you find screenshots on WhatsApp, where on every other platform. But Twitter hasn't really found a way of monetizing that until now. So
the thing
it sounds crazy, but I think it will take off.
Yeah, what really sounded crazy and they didn't like was the paying for 2FA. No.
Paying for two-factor
authentication. Yes, SMS-based.
But he explained it well. He said that telcos are giving them huge bills.
Oh, okay.
If I had to go back to ChatGPT, I logged in the morning and I got a prompt that I can jump the queue because it does get crowded in there. Because in Kenya, we are one of the markets where you can access ChatGPT Pro. So we have a Twitter Blue subscriber here. You also on ChatGPT Pro?
No, I'm not.
Dixon?
No, I always refresh. Wakati nasema kuna problems with answering, because there's nothing better you're getting with ChatGPT Pro or Plus or whatever, and just no downtimes. But why would you pay when the answers are the same? So just refresh. I'm gonna wait for the downtime to be over, and you'll get your answer. I use ChatGPT a lot, so I don't think I'll pay. Yeah.
Thank you for helping train it for us. June, are you paying?
No.
Have you ever used ChatGPT though?
I haven't, and I'm very embarrassed to say this, but I'm literally logging in now. At least I have a DALI account, guys. At least I have a DALI account.
Maybe, but on the other hand, don't feel so guilty. Maybe it's we live in our own bubbles. We are always on the cutting edge, trying to catch up. Maybe even majority of our listeners don't bother with ChatGPT, and we are in of ourselves. Anyway, moving on.
But it's the fastest platform to 100 million users.
Yeah,
it took 2 months, 100 days. I don't.
Something of interest that has happened in this month. I'm not sure if either of you two gentlemen covered it, and I don't know if June you followed it, because it involves the courts, lawyers, and all those things. Flutterwave should be Africa's biggest fintech or something that is not M-Pesa, got off the hook. In Kenya, they had run into regulatory issues. They had their accounts frozen, all of those things. And all of a sudden, the coast is clear. It's called UGB, has been around. Mm-hmm. They even have a local team, and they're hiring.
So they're hiring, okay.
Yeah, they're hiring. So if you're listening to this podcast, it's not all tech, it's not all gloom in tech. There are people who are hiring.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I remember covering that, and I think the first people to report about their charges being dropped was Bloomberg. So actually, everyone went and picked the story from Bloomberg. Mm. So then I think last week I saw all the money that has been frozen from them. Well, to issue all the money. So what I didn't understand is, did this mean they're now free to operate in Kenya? Because when you see the list, the CBK released the other day about license payment service providers, mm-hmm. they don't fee. They're not anywhere on that list. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we're not sure if that means they're not free to operate, in Kenya, because I use Flutterwave, but when there was kicked out of the market, that I couldn't even log to the app. When you log to the app, you can't even see Kenya. That's what was happening. Yeah. So I'm not sure, what this means. Is it they're really not operate? Chances say they're hiring, so maybe, I don't know.
June, what's your understanding now that this is all legal stuff that we don't know?
Yeah, so I'm literally on Kenya Law trying to pull up the cases, and I can't find it. So I'm really active in the space, so I'd like to think that I would have access to those pleadings if they were publicly available, and I personally have not set my eyes on them. So no comments.
Good. Dixon, you have any comment?
Nothing.
In January, we highlighted Starlink that it will come here at least in Q2, and it will also be going to TZ. This month they got cleared to
in Nigeria.
In Rwanda.
No, Nigeria was last month. In Rwanda. Yeah. Last month they did Nigeria, and they also did get approvals in Malawi, and now they're in Rwanda.
Mm-hmm. But this month is the time nimeona Nigerian content creators wakisema
they
pricing.
They're able to access it basically, but the announcement was from the previous month. Yes. So
what I know we are. Pardon?
No, sorry. I was just going to ask, did you see the Tanzania tweet where the regulator pushed back at Elon through a tweet and told them, we actually told you that you need to meet some certain requirements before this is available in Tanzania? Did you guys see that?
Allah.
Oh, so
Allah. I didn't see that. Wow.
So someone tweeted, so Elon put out the tweet, and then someone tweeted at him and said, we'd love to have this in Tanzania or something to the effect. And then Elon said, your government hasn't given us approval. One ministry government official came back with receipts, and he literally tweeted back at Elon and said, we've already told you guys these are the list of requirements you need to meet from a regulatory standpoint, and you haven't done it, so that's why. So that was interesting to see.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'll go check that up, but I love me an Elon roast anytime. Good. Now, staying with lawyers, we had in when we were doing the January roundup, we thought we'll take long. Maybe sometime last week is when we would have seen this happen, but it happened right after we did our recording. Safaricom got a new chairman. He has a difficult name, Adil who?
Okay, let me just
explain. Yeah, that one, and he's a lawyer. I don't know, June. What does this at least mean? Safaricom has a new chairman. The other new chairman just exited. Now we have a new one. Kawaja, whatever. Any thoughts?
I think for me, it's just that lawyers are very good leaders.
Is this a chat GPT or a search?
No, but it's interesting to see how the dynamic changes. I think one of you guys put a post saying Bob's legacy, or rather Bob's, or was it Abuya, where they said that Bob's executive committee has now been all gotten rid of, like the management.
The execs he left in place.
And Peter is now putting his in place. So it's interesting to see how that dynamic plays out. What changes, what stays. I think it's an interesting kind of
any Safaricom shareholder. None of us are shareholders.
Okay. Because
Safaricom.
Yes.
Are you not?
Yes.
You don't have Safaricom shares?
No, I'm not.
Safaricom shares.
Nope.
Yeah. I do. I have Bonga points.
Okay, I'm also a shareholder then.
I wanted to ask a Safaricom shareholder what they think of the new chairman. Now, as a Safaricom shareholder, not as a lawyer.
No opinion. No comment.
Okay.
I mean, I think...
Don't worry, your shares won't go down after you make the remarks.
But to be fair, on a serious note, I mean, I think Safaricom is one of the biggest and most leading companies, at least on the continent. Let's not even talk about just in Kenya. And I know by the time that they're getting executive leaders or putting anyone in leadership positions, they have like a very thorough process and check. Obviously, there's political issues there as well that we are not ignorant to. But then I guess we wait and see. We hope for the best.
And actually, that was not the only appointment Safaricom
made. At the start of the month, the chairman came in towards the end of January. But the reason we are talking about those appointments is because at the start of February, Peter moved in to clean house. He had a bunch of chief officers coming in, right?
Yeah.
You covered them, Nick?
Yes, I did. So Esther Masese, she was appointed the chief financial service officer. Then they appointed...
Have you guys watched her Engage talk?
Oh, really? There is? Nope. I heard about her for the first time when I saw the press release of her appointment in my inbox. Maybe I've overlooked her in the past, but now definitely she's on the spotlight.
I'll tell you the Engage talk. She's a superstar, at least in the finance space. So it's interesting to see. And has like a wealth of experience, I think largely in SA, but then across SSA as well. So it's interesting to see how that plugs into Safaricom and where they're going now.
And we had Zizwe Awor, if I pronounce that correct, joining Safaricom as the director for brand and marketing. Yeah, so Peter's cleaned house. Okay, if you are to stay in telco, the biggest story of the last 2 days is eSIM.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I was at the launch.
Yeah, you are at the launch. Tell us, please.
Airtel has not invited me for anything for the 3 years.
I was at the launch yesterday morning, and even the is it CEO for Africa?
CEO for Airtel Africa.
Yeah,
before 7, my page on FB is down because Airtel reported that I had violated their copyright messaging by mentioning Airtel for mobile money article.
Allah.
So endelea.
Yeah. So the launch was actually good, but maybe should have been just an email. An email or something. Yes. But at least we got to.
But I'm going to get my eSIM.
Yeah. But at least we got to get some very interesting news about the CEOs talking about how Kenyans can now buy shares in Airtel starting. I don't know. They're thinking about that as well.
They're thinking of going public.
Yeah, going public. Yeah, yeah. But of course, the major highlight was the eSIM launch.
Okay. Yeah. As a customer, as a Kenyan, not a customer, will you buy Airtel shares, Airtel Kenya?
Okay, that's a tough one. I think I would.
No, yes or no question.
Yeah. Okay, no.
Why would you?
Why not?
Why not? Because do they make even profits actually? That's the thing.
I don't know about the profitability, but I think going public gives Airtel an edge, more money to do all these investments that they need to do. First of all, they're planning to roll out 5G and all the best, because Safaricom 5G has been quite disappointing.
On the 5G, before we go on, I remember asking the CEO, he released a swali during that press conference. Okay, you said you're going to launch 5G, but what they didn't do is, they didn't give it the timeline. So like also when I can be no, okay, we can't give timelines.
But timelines are okay because Safaricom 5G has been talked about since pandemic, Nini. We can now access Safaricom 5G. On my Safaricom app, I got a prompt for a 5G only bundle. And it's expensive. It's expensive. Let me just check right now. It's 10,000 shillings for 200 GB 5G ready. So that's quite expensive, but 200 GB for 10K anyway. So I think they can take their time with 5G. Everyone around the world is sort of disappointed with 5G. The speeds are not at what we were promised. Alafu the hassle of always being in line of sight and all that.
Yeah.
You get into a building, there's no 5G and all that. But Airtel's major problems have been that there's a very big player in the market that people can argue is dominant. They don't see themselves as dominant because arguments are made that a dominant player can only be termed as dominant when they are abusing their dominance and all that. But now that Safaricom, now that Airtel is looking to become a public company, you can argue that it's a Kenyan company because all this time we can have viewed Airtel as a foreign company entering the market. So once it's owned and part of Kenya, I think there are things that they can stand to benefit from. One of the things has been the fact that for a very long time, when you think about mobile money, you've always been thinking about Sindio. Airtel has already broken up Airtel Telco money, Sindio. So there is a view that as a Kenyan company, even when building a platform or working with certain things, Airtel can be considered as a means of payment and all that, because that has been the upper edge for Safaricom M-Pesa. You find that public government facilities, hata e-citizen na nini, for the longest time watu wengi wanafikiria tu hapo Kenya unaweza lipa nayo ni M-Pesa. Uende kwa government office na vitu hizo. So I think going public will give Airtel this understand that, I don't know the word to use, but that they are a Kenyan company and that you can transact with them na vitu hizo.
Yeah, and you know what why they're doing this? Apparently, last year in April last year, the state unveiled a licensing policy that gave telecoms up to March 2024 to ensure local ownership of at least 30%. Yep.
Which I don't think.
That's interesting. Now, one of you asked about. Yes, go on, June.
Intel actually had like an infinite exemption for a very long time. They got like an exemption from the local shareholding rule, but that has obviously come up in policy circles, and I think that's going to be revised very soon. So
why do they have an exemption? I'm curious now.
Well, it was building the country and the economy for my own safety.
Yeah, these political arrangements.
No, but they were the only company for a long time that had an exemption. It was a ministerial exemption that was had for years, because typically you should have meet the local shareholding threshold in about 3 years or so. I need to confirm, but they had
and they've been around since 99
exemption.
It's the same Airtel.
No. They've inherited the sins of their fathers.
Because they have two options.
Yeah, I think the other thing as well, which I think is interesting to highlight, as Airtel is starting to make moves as well. Last year, they got 194 million. They got a loan from the IFC to support universal and affordable broadband access across 6 countries. So that might also...
that's Airtel Africa, right?
Yes, Airtel Africa. But I'd be interested in seeing how that plays out for Kenya specifically. They also partnered with American Tower last year to have more fuel-efficient infrastructure.
Yeah,
they had a deal in October.
Covered all that.
So that's interesting to see as well.
And they have lots of partnerships with Nokia money.
And Airtel Africa by itself is actually doing very well. They had a 12% growth in profit last year, but they did us an injustice by not telling us what their Kenyan arm was doing. The latest figures we have for their Kenyan arm are from 2021, when it made a loss of, I think, 1.7 billion shillings. So we don't know what they did in 2022. That would be an interesting number to look at. The other thing we don't talk often is, June, you travel a lot. One of the best lines to have is your Airtel line when you're traveling across African countries. Yes.
True.
Yes. They have that one Africa plan. I went to Nigeria, and my entire time I was there, I was tethering like I'm in Kenya, because I had lots of bundles courtesy of Airtel, and I didn't even mind the blackouts in Nigeria. I was just fine. So yeah, Airtel is doing well, and if they can, I hope the local arm can grow and give Safaricom a run for its money. All of us will be better for it.
Because I mean they released their revenues, I think, last week, and they're talking about hitting $523 million in revenues.
Yeah,
and that was
Africa. No, the Africa.
And that was like a 12.1% increase from the previous year. So
that's really good.
Now, finishing up with telcos, there's one who isn't so happy. South Africa runs Equitel. Of course, their mother is the Equity Bank Group. And this week, somebody tabled something interesting in Parliament, and they are going to summon the industry regulator, that's the Central Bank of Kenya, and the Anti-Bank Fraud Unit, to have them share with the Senate what they are doing about all the cases of fraud that have been reported. If you are looking at Kenyan social media over the last 3-4 weeks, it's been fire. Yeah. And the senator who brought this to the floor of the house actually mentioned by name Equity Bank and a specific case. So that will be interesting to hear how it happens, because if the Senate rules on this and the specific Senate committee that the senator asked does provide further guidance that shows a way of how to operate, then we might stop finally having silence, because every other time these cases get reported, then what we get is we are treated to silence. And if you are like one of us, you prod Equity for an answer, they'll tell you this is under investigation, they can't comment. And most times inaisha hivyo, we never get to hear the end of the matter. Yet those cases are many, they are not isolated, there's obviously something cooking. If the Senate issues guidelines, maybe everyone will have to follow. Lastly, we talked about something here. There are still 2 things we need to talk about, but there's one major thing of interest, because we've seen the results today, just the day when we are recording the podcast. Loop, Dixon.
Yeah.
Loop. Nice. Loop is reducing. Loop is reducing transaction fees. So they will. Yes.
Yeah.
They've announced. Let it just load that. That the pay bill number, which has never been free, it is actually the most expensive pay bill number at bank for the longest time, will now be free. So if you top up via M-Pesa, all cash deposits into Loop will be free. Second thing is they've updated their Loop rates. So Loop to mobile till numbers is free. That has always been free. Then Loop to mobile pay bill. If you're paying your M-Pesa pay bill from Loop, they've updated their fees. They're now almost at par with Safaricom's M-Pesa pay bill fees. They were really expensive. Then Loop to mobile money has been reduced. I paid 24 shillings to send 800 bob. 24 shillings to send 800 bob. They've reduced that to 12 shillings. They've reduced this to match mostly mobile money up to above 3,500, where it will be 48 shillings. They have maintained loop-to-loop transaction fees, which is weird because I'm sending from your platform to your platform. Equity to equity remains free. So the loop-to-loop is free up to 500 shillings, then above 500, 6 bob, then 36 bob. Then loop to PesaLink is free up to 500 shillings, then 60 bob flat. Then loop to TGS is 60, then loop to EFT is 60. Yeah. So still on this issue, I&M this month announced that
yes,
I&M to M-Pesa is free. So I am opening my I&M and very soon. Yes, because I think it makes more sense to have me send money to myself for free.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So will you be changing your Twitter user to I&M Stan account?
Imagine maybe pole if Loop. I think this is okay. These are fairer charges than most of the Nini if you look at the comparisons. But it still is. I think free is better than 6 bob, and free is better than 12 bob. Yeah. The thing that will get more people on Loop is depositing money to your account is free.
It's free.
Yeah. I think depositing to I&M will not be free, but if you're a person earning a salary, it makes sense to be on I&M so that you can earn your salary on I&M, cash your check on the I&M because Loop doesn't cash checks and all that, and withdraw it to your M-Pesa for free. Yeah.
Good. I'm going to walk through 3 things that happened in the month. One is the launch of the Oppo Reno HT series, which we've covered in a separate podcast. You should listen to. Yeah. And then we got 114 developer preview 1. Yeah. No, it's a housekeeping update. Android has matured. There's not much. It's not 10 years ago when there used to be so many groundbreaking things. Nope. It's just housekeeping issues, tiny things that we like, some that are even available on Android skins. Yeah, and I want to hear
a small Mac update.
Oh yeah,
that has dealt with battery.
I want to hear. Did any of you go to the African Tech Summit, Nick?
Nope, I didn't because I didn't get an invite. Despite them actually being all over my inbox.
They were giving tickets. you could have bought.
Me at a
the best thing to do if you keep sending me content to cover for you about your event, the best thing to give me an invite as a media to attend. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I didn't manage to attend. Yeah. But there were some interesting announcements actually from that summit.
Good. The last thing that I want us to focus on, June, these are our points of interest. Nokia had a bunch of devices in Feb every other week.
I haven't covered them.
There was the
I haven't covered
the T21 tablet came.
T21, which was
a new tablet, a new phone, and
and the new phone is so horrible. I don't know why it exists.
Wow.
I haven't covered Nokia.
These guys don't like Nokia phones.
No, like be honest, Kanali. Be honest.
Don't put me on the spot.
It's when we are recording our review of the Oppo Reno 8T, I actually said most times I have to be like to nitpick when it comes to things I don't like in a phone. So I'm at a point where I generally like every other phone that's brought to me to review or that I get to cover. That's how matured mobile tech has come. There's something for everyone. At this point, you'll dismiss something out of preferences, not because it's so bad it doesn't deserve. But that's what the Nokia C12. It's the C12.
Yeah, the C12.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of preference. It's 11K.
It's 11K.
How many GB storage?
Let me just look at those specs here.
Me, I didn't cover.
I think the best Nokia phones are those flagship of theirs. You know, they're really
no, Kanali, no.
We've not had a good Nokia phone in our
RAM. And 64 gigs of internal storage.
Okay, and processor Unisoc.
A 28 nanometer process Unisoc in 2023.
Come on, guys.
That's so bad.
Anyway, this month I published my review of the Phantom X2 Pro. Guys should check it out. Where I argue on the case of Tecno moving into flagship status. Anything else? June kuna chochote before we...
Yeah, a quick one around Twitter and Elon Musk. Normally, Twitter and other tech companies publish transparency reports where they report on any law enforcement issues they've dealt with, any requests for information, user data, and the like. Twitter was supposed to release theirs. Typically, they do around this time, but we haven't seen it yet. So it's an ongoing conversation, like you said, being run as a startup. So we wait until we actually get that data or not.
They haven't even been paying rent in Europe. You are worrying about the reports.
Even their Slack account. I saw a tweet about their Slack.
They have bigger problem. Even their code, right? So I spoke to like a former senior developer, and she says like even the code was messy, like the backend was messy. So they have bigger problems.
There are lots of, for us who use Twitter almost on a daily basis, there are lots of tiny things all over the place that are just not working. And yeah, the whole thing is just a mess. And
sorry. Where you tried to follow someone and you couldn't follow people. Was it even a few days ago?
DM is broken.
DM is broken. I'm holding a MacBook right now, and they forgot the Mac Twitter app ever exists.
Yeah, I know.
Like all these features we are talking about, none has ever come to that app. Like,
I mean, you spoke about Trent, and I saw a tweet today. Someone saying how Twitter employees have been locked out of the Slack account because apparently Elon didn't pay for that new one. Yeah. It was just
normally a CEO wouldn't be obsessed about tiny things like paying for subscriptions, but most likely the person who does that was fired. So
true. So we wait and see.
Yeah. Anyway,
I think this will be controversial, but I think if the company was running na watu wote na sahi inaraniwa na mtu mmoja after 44 billion and we can still tweet.
Wow.
It means they were not necessary.
Because do you even see how long they take to even approve stuff? We applied for Twitter Blue when you were testing with TechTrends the other day.
Yeah.
It was approved yesterday. I think
after how long?
Yeah, like almost 3 weeks, I think.
I mean, it has to reach Elon Musk.
He approves them one by one.
Website imesema nini kunihusu?
Anyway, gentlemen, lady, it's been an honor, a privilege to have you sharing with us what the highlights of the month have been. We hope to do this in a few weeks when we'll be reviewing March. We hope there'll be lots of good news in March. Phones that we really like, no one getting fired, lots of good stuff happening. I've been your host, Chenza Emmanuel.
Dixon Atieno.
Nick Kanali.
Okal. Oh.
See you next time. Bye.